We had left off class with the election of 1896. William McKinley and William Jennings Bryan will be the respective Republican and Democratic candidates. The leading candidate for the Republican presidential nomination was ex-Congressman William McKinley of Ohio. He had established a credible Civil War record, having risen to the rank of major. I had mentioned earlier in one of the lectures that every single presidential candidate provided by the Republican Party had been a Civil War veteran, from Grant all the way to McKinley. He will be the last Civil War veteran presidential candidate, except for one, and that had been Tilden. So once again, he had risen to the ranks of major. He came from the electorally potent state of Ohio, and he could point to long years of honorable service in Congress, where he had made many friends by his kindly and conciliatory manner. He had spent years in Congress and was probably one of the best-liked members in Congress. He had a way of making people like him, and people genuinely liked him. McKinley was a small man in stature, standing only 5'7" tall. He was helped by fellow Ohioan Marcus Alonzo Hanna. Hanna had made his fortune in the iron business. He was personally attracted to McKinley. "I love McKinley," he once said. So much so that he put his money where his mouth was. Put his money where his mouth was. No. Did I say that right? When McKinley faced bankruptcy after unwisely endorsing a friend's note for about $100,000. What this actually was his business partner. He and another gentleman had gone into business together, and his business partner associate had taken all the money out of the accounts and run off and couldn't be found. This left McKinley holding the bag for responsibility of all of this debt. Hanna and his wealthy associates paid off the obligation. Now, that is putting your money where your mouth is. That time I know I got it right. $100,000 is a lot of money today, but back then that was a huge sum that he and his associates paid off. You wouldn't do this for someone that you really didn't genuinely care about. Hanna believed that the prime function of government was to aid business. He believed that prosperity trickled down to the laborer, whose dinner pail was full when business flourished. This is a Republican concept that has been around for years. Still to this day, this is the Republican business program. And when you're listening to the news or something sometime, you may hear them talk about the trickle-down theory. The Republican theory is the trickle-down theory. The Democratic theory is the trickle-up theory, which is the exact opposite. I created a little diagram here. The Republican theory was, if the economy is bad off, the first area you must assist is the businesses at the top. And if the government can pump money, do anything to assist the businesses, and they can thrive, they will therefore have jobs available for employees because they will be producing goods, and the workers will then have jobs with money in their pocket. They will have a full dinner pail, and business will therefore flourish. When they have money, they will then spend that money on goods that the businesses are producing, and so the whole cycle will continue if you can aid business at the top. The prosperity will trickle down to the masses. Now, the Democratic theory is the exact opposite. I'm not saying one theory is right and one theory is wrong, but their theory is, no, you start out by putting money in the hands of the laborer, and if he has money in his pocket, he will spend it. When he spends it, companies will have orders to produce. They will then need workers to fill their jobs, and you will have economic recovery. So they go at theirs exactly the opposite. You give money to the bottom rung, and it will work its way up to the top. Whereas the Republicans say, no, start at the top of the pyramid, and it will work its way down. So McKinley, in both of the terms that he will run for, he will talk about the full dinner pail. Workers that went to their jobs carried this was before cafeterias in every place and McDonald's on the corner, they carried their dinner pail with them. And if they are paid enough, they have enough money to have a full dinner pail when they go to work. So Hanna believes in this, and he is backing McKinley. He organized his pre-convention campaign for McKinley with skill and a liberal outpouring of his own money. The Republican platform clearly straddled the monetary issue. It declared for a gold standard. They said, hey, we haven't even come close to 16-1, and the economy was ruined. We had to have big business, J.P. Morgan come in and his associates and lend the government $65 million in gold. We cannot continue this. And so he says, we've got to go back to the gold standard. But he straddles the issue. Oh, what a politician. He said, we are going back to the gold standard. But all you silverites that are out there still screaming 16-1 and wanting silver in the treasury, I haven't forgotten about you. Nationally, we will be on the gold standard. But the international market, we will use a bimetallic system for. Now, that sounds very good. All right, for all international trade, we'll use both metals. That's way to pacify the other side. The problem was the other side doesn't realize it, but internationally, other nations do not use a bimetallic system in trading. They trade only on the gold standard. And so are they going to accept our silver in return? No, they're only going to take gold. And so while we're saying we are going to be bimetallic, in reality, we are going to be on the gold standard nationally as well as internationally. But by the verbiage that he uses, it sounds like we are going to be bimetallic internationally. The Democrats, oh, okay, hang on. Let me show you a campaign poster here. Here we've got William McKinley. He is firmly standing on the gold standard. At home, prosperity at home, prestige abroad. So if I am elected, I will put us back on the gold standard. We will recover economically, and life will be grand again. Once again, here you have McKinley as presidential candidate, his vice presidential candidate, and it says warranted for 4 years. Who is warranting this combination? Good old Mark Hanna. He's the one riding the bicycle of McKinley and his vice presidential candidate. Now, on to the Democrats nominated William Jennings Bryan of Nebraska. He was 36 years old. Man, barely making it. Constitution says to be a presidential candidate, you must be 35 years old. Had he have won, he would have been the youngest president we have ever had. 36 years old. He was known as the Boy Orator of the Platte. Boy Orator of the Platte. The Platte River runs through Nebraska. He is from Nebraska. And he is very young, but he was very gifted in oratory, in speech giving, in making his voice project, etc. And so he is given the nickname the Boy Orator of the Platte. His masterful presence was set off by handsome features, a smooth-shaven jaw, and raven black hair. He radiated honesty, sincerity, and energy. He had a good mind, but not a brilliant one. And he delivers a fiery plea for silver. Judge Magazine, this picture on their front cover is an example, is alluding to his plea for silver. Rising to supreme heights of eloquence, he thundered, "We will answer their demands for a gold standard by saying to them, you shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold." This therefore became known as his Cross of Gold speech. And here is his crown of thorns to be pressed down upon the brow of labor. He is an ardent Presbyterian, and he is using biblical terminology here in his references, and here it has open to even the Bible in this cartoon put together for Judge Magazine. Most Americans claimed to be Christians back then and knew probably a lot more about the Bible than many Americans today do. And so they knew very much what he was talking about when he talked about the Republicans' cross of gold versus his wanting silver and pushing down on labor the crown of thorns. The platform declared for the unlimited coinage of silver at a ratio of 16-1. This meant that the silver in $1 would be worth about 50 cents. We had never come close to 16-1 and ruined the economy. This is a dead issue. Can Bryan give it up? No. I am going to go all the way, 16-1. This had been one of the populists' main planks, and now with the Democratic majority taking up their main issue of 16-1, the party has run out of its steam because now a major party, the Democrats, have their steam with the 16-1 issue. And here, this cartoon, the populists are eating the Democratic Party. They're all becoming one. The bulk of the populists, therefore, endorse Bryan. So the Democrats can plan on the Democratic vote plus the populist vote. Sweeping through 27 states and traveling 18,000 miles, William Jennings Bryan made between 500 and 600 speeches, 36 in one day. He even invades the East, which was considered the enemy's country. His main strength was in the West and in the farm belt of the Midwest. And I had mentioned to you earlier about the train. You got on the caboose and you rode from town to town, and wherever it stopped for however many minutes, your candidate got on the back and spoke to the crowd, and then as the train pulled out, he went back in the car until the next town. That's how he was able to give 36 speeches in a single day. Hordes of fanatical free silverites hailed Bryan as the Messiah to lead them out of the wilderness of debt. But Bryan created panic amongst Eastern conservatives. In God we trust. Right here, in God we trust. With Bryan we bust. They said, oh no. If we have Bryan as the president, our economy will be bust. In McKinley we trust, in Bryan we bust. A campaign pin that would have been passed out by the Republican Party. Mark Hanna shook down the trusts and piled up an enormous slush fund for a campaign of education, or as the opposing party would call it, a campaign of propaganda. The Republicans amassed the most formidable political campaign chest thus far in American history. Earlier, I had said they had amassed a massive fortune by shaking down the trusts, frying the fat out of industrialists, etc., and they had acquired $3 million. Well, in this election, $3 million was a drop in the bucket. They raised $16 million, in contrast with about $1 million for the Democrats. Roughly 16 to 1. So the Republicans have $16 million to use in this campaign. The Democrats, $1 million. Bryanites accused Hanna of buying the election. Republicans harped constantly on their promise of prosperity, reminding voters of Cleveland's Democratic panic. They appealed to the belly vote with their prize slogan being McKinley and the full dinner pail. Cleveland's first term had been fabulously successful. He had a huge surplus, but then Harrison had wiped out his surplus. And in his second term, he had had depression, recession, his whole term. Is it his fault? No. But if you're in power when it hits, it's your fault or your situation to solve. And could Cleveland get us out of the recession, the depression? No. And so it is blamed on him. This is a Democratic recession. McKinley and the full dinner pail. Count me for McKinley and a full dinner pail. This is what those old dinner pails used to look like. I don't know exactly how they were inside, if there was a thermos in there, but your drink cup was always on top, but your food, you must have, or maybe you got drink from a fountain at work, but your meal was in there and your cup was always on top. Once again, prosperity, full dinner pail. Hanna says, stand pat for the full dinner pail. Once again, the full dinner pail in the background. Here's a worker with his dinner pail hanging off his arm as he heads to work. I don't remember if this was one I got to show you or if this was one we missed when the PowerPoint was down, but they campaigned and called this a Democratic depression, and how the soup kitchens were handing out food to the hobos and whatnot, and this same symbol was used back earlier by the Republicans against the Democrats. They talked about the Democratic soup bowl, people going to the soup kitchen. And so here they pick up that same theme, and you've got the full dinner pail against the soup bowl. And the slogan, hurrah for the full dinner pail. McKinley, though an effective orator, was no match for Bryan in the rough and tumble of stump speaking. He remained at his Ohio home, conducting a quiet and dignified front porch campaign. He read calm and confident little speeches to delegations of visiting Republicans. So Bryan's out there campaigning his little feet off. McKinley, no. Ever so often, press is called in. He steps out on his front porch of his home in Ohio. He reads a little speech, hands it out for the press, and that's all the campaigning he has to do. The party, with their $16 million, is handling the rest of it. And from Judge Magazine, I love this. I absolutely love it. The full dinner pail argument has too much a reach for Mr. Bryan. And this must be centerfold of the Judge Magazine here. And here's the full dinner pail, supposedly representing labor. We are going to promise increased wages. We are going to promise prosperity. We are Republicans. And here is his team in the background. Uncle Sam here is serving as the referee up against William Jennings Bryan. He is for cheap money. That's 16-1. And he is anti-expansionism. That's something that the Republicans, we are going to soon pick up on, are very much into expanding U.S. borders, U.S. trade, etc. And here the Democrats are getting ready, it looks like, to throw in the towel. Great cartoon, great cartoon. Before we get there, Republican businessmen placed contracts with manufacturers contingent on the election of McKinley. A few factory owners, with thinly veiled intimidation, paid off their workers and told them not to come to work on Wednesday morning if Bryan won. Ooh! So my company buys widgets from your company. So I contact you and I say, I would like to place an order for 50,000 widgets. But don't start running that order until after the first Tuesday in November when the election takes place on Wednesday. If McKinley has won, the order's good. Go ahead and process my order. If Bryan has won, then cancel that order. Don't process it at all. Ooh, if I am the company receiving that order, I need that order. And so what am I going to tell my workers? Hey, if we want business to continue, if we want these orders, you better go to the polls and vote Republican. Others, as I mentioned, with thinly veiled intimidation, paid their workers off Monday. All right, guys, here's your pay for today. Don't come to work Tuesday. It's voting day. You all get to the polls. And if Bryan wins, you have no job on Wednesday. Don't bother to come back. If McKinley wins, you've got a job. Come on back and let's continue work. Some employers even threaten to pay their employees in 50-cent pieces instead of dollars if Bryan triumphed. Bryan said, I will take it 16-1. If we had have gotten there, the dollar would have been worth 50 cents. That's how much depreciation would have occurred. So the employers say, hey, if Bryan wins, that must be what you people want. And so your wages are going to be cut in half. For every dollar you earn, I'm going to pay you 50 cents. Ooh. McKinley, though, does triumph at the ballot box decisively, 271 to 176 in the Electoral College. Business was given a free rein, and the trusts that had trusted in him in 1896 were now allowed to develop more mighty muscles without serious restraints. You're saying, how could the red win when there's ever so much more of the United States covered in blue? It has to do with the Electoral College. It's going to take an awful lot of these 3s and 4s and 8s and 15s and 13s and 9s and 4s to equal 36 for New York, 32 for Pennsylvania, 23 for Ohio. If you take the major states, you can lose all the others. I don't know, I think I mentioned this earlier once in one of the lectures. You only need to win the top 11 states in the United States electorally to win the election. The top 11 states. You can lose the other 39 and still win the election. That's why this Electoral College is so important. That's why the census is so important. Every 10 years, the same number of electors, we don't change the number of electors, is redistributed, divided up differently between the states. California right now has the biggest number of electors, and Texas, I think, has the second biggest number of electors. So please make sure anyone you know is filling out their census. We want to get even bigger. Here, once again, I told you it's rather rare in today's day and age, almost unheard of, but back then not so unheard of. Here, one Democrat, it was supposed to vote 9 for California Republican, but one guy said nope. Same thing here in Kentucky. Should have been 13 Republicans, but one elector was doing his own thing. I don't think so. I'm going to vote how I feel. So in the popular, much closer, 51 to 47. But in the electoral, quite a margin. McKinley was able to get along well with Congress. He had served there for many years. He was conciliatory, warm-handed. He's shown best at reconciling conflicting interests. He could send an angry-faced man away from the Oval Office beaming, sometimes even wearing our carnation from the presidential desk. So he was the type that when somebody came into his office and they were just sputtering mad, he knew how to shake their hand and say, "Hey, Bob, it's been a long time since we've talked. What's on your mind? Sit down and tell me all about it." And he gave you his undivided attention, made you think he was really concerned with what you had to say and was going to do something about it. Now, whether he did or not is another matter, but he had a conciliatory manner about him. And he could even so much as take a carnation off of the arrangement on his desk, put it in the guy's buttonhole on his lapel, and, "Hey, next time I see you, I want to know how your wife and kids are doing." You know, just a very friendly man. This is where he's shown best. McKinley continued to maintain intimate relations with Hannah, but he was by no means under the thumb of Hannah. Hannah was not calling the shots. No, McKinley made up his own mind, but the two were still very good friends. And Puck Magazine. I love these cartoons that they come up with. Thanksgiving. This is right after the election. Remember the first Tuesday of every November, and McKinley has just won. And here they've got that huge turkey. This is Mark Hanna, and this is McKinley, and they've got the sound money vote. They have won. They are going to try and get back to the gold standard, and it says, Thanksgiving for what we are about to receive. May the Lord make us truly thankful. Oh, yes, we have won. And his inauguration. He is sworn in front of the masses out in front of the Capitol building. This is a drawing, obviously. And I am assuming that this is Cleveland. And this would be his vice president here behind him. This one, I got it on offline, but they have cut around the main characters, and we cannot see what is in the background. They've, I don't know, is this called photoshopping or something? But this one is an actual photograph, and here is McKinley being sworn in, and the outgoing Grover Cleveland. All the other individuals are not showing. Inflation without silver. Prosperity, long lurking around the corner, began to return with a rush in 1897, the first year of McKinley's administration. The Depression of 1893 had run its course, and farm prices began to rise. Had a Democrat been elected, would the economy still have turned around? Most likely. These things, these recessions, these depressions, they have a cycle. We had run the cycle. We were coming out of it. But the Republicans are in power. Who are they going to claim has ended the depression? Of course, the Republicans. They claimed credit for the bringing in of the sunlight of prosperity. The Gold Standard Act, though, was not passed by the Republicans until a couple years later, in 1900, when many of the Silverites had left Congress. Remember those mid-term elections? Yes, get those people from halfway through out, and then that is the time for pushing through, going back strictly to the gold standard nationally. It provided that the paper currency was to be redeemed freely in gold. At the same time, though, discoveries of new gold deposits in Canada, in the Klondike region up there, in Alaska, in South Africa, and Australia eased the pressure. Once again, supply and demand. Suddenly, there's a lot of gold coming into the economies of other nations. Its scarcity is not what it had been previously. Supply and demand. Are people trying to grab up gold? No. The United States economy is doing well. Do people have faith in the dollar again? Yes. Are they needing to hoard gold? No. So things are doing well. And on this note, we will stop for this segment.